You're listening to the Deloitte Business Chemistry Confessions podcast series. Hello, I'm your host, Kim Christford, National Managing Director of the Deloitte Greenhouses.
And I'm Suzanne Vickberg, also known as Dr. Suze, lead researcher for business chemistry.
Welcome to this week's episode of Deloitte Business Chemistry Confessions. You're about to go on a journey of true workplace stories of success and failure that all came down to one thing: business chemistry. Have you ever found yourself working for someone that just didn't seem to like you or get you? Sometimes people don't immediately make connections with each other. For whatever reason, we talk past each other and seem to be from different worlds. Today's episode, My Boss the Robot, explores Rose's experience with her new boss, Laura, and the mismatch between their working styles.
There was no talk of family, even though I could see photos of her kids on her desk. She didn't ask about my interests, my passions, long-term goals, her vision for the team, nothing.
We'll hear how this led to her almost quitting her job, or even being fired.
Well, I was super excited. It was the first time that I was going to be in a job with a global focus, and particularly it was focused on Latin America, so that's a big passion of mine. I'm from Mexico, so having the opportunity to interact with member firms throughout Latin America was something that I was very excited to do. The first day I met my boss, I was waiting outside of her office, and she just walked down the hallway, didn't look up, and just went straight to her office. Eventually, I went over, knocked on the door, introduced myself, but she was completely wrapped into some spreadsheets and on her computer. I finally did get a chance to meet her later that day, and I was really looking forward to getting to know her and talking about what her expectations were. Obviously, working in finance, numbers are a big thing, and to my boss, they seemed like a very important thing. When I walked in, she stayed seated, double-checking some numbers on a spreadsheet. I introduced myself and gave her a little information about my background. She asked some detailed questions about my prior work experiences and then launched into telling me about a report that we were under pressure to produce. There was no talk of family, even though I could see photos of her kids on her desk. She didn't ask about my interests, my passions, long-term goals, her vision for the team, nothing. I wanted to ask her about the vision for the department, but felt uncomfortable after she moved the conversation so quickly to details about this deliverable. So at that point, I was just ready to get going to show her the value that I could bring to the team. I got right down to work, and after a few days, I felt the report was ready to go. I hit all the main points she asked for and even added some creative twists. I made some improvements in how the information was presented. I cut some unnecessary detail and added some bolder language and interesting visuals. I triumphantly printed it and brought it in to discuss with her. She thanked me, but immediately got out her pen and started marking it up with edits. And there sure were a lot of edits. She removed all the new features and took issue with me rounding the numbers at the executive level. Then nitpicked about which numbers were bolded and which were not and why. I don't even want to go into telling you about her preferences about indenting columns in the left or right margin. I was thinking to myself, do these things really matter? I thought the important thing was that the report communicated how the division was on plan and how the next quarter was looking great, but she kept focusing on minutia. At one point, she actually took out her calculator and started making sure that the rows added up and the columns added up. Then she pointed out that the rounding made the numbers off by $1. I mean, we're talking about a multi-million-dollar business. My first impression was that she had lost sight of the bigger picture, that she had little interest in my thoughts for improving how things were done. As the first weeks and months of our partnership rolled by, we continued struggling with our difference in perspective. And things continued to get worse, and I felt more and more shut down by her rules and her micromanaging. I had come in so excited and full of ideas for how to bring our division to the next level, but I quickly got to the point of wondering whether that was even possible and whether I would even be able to stay at the company. all I could think of was, how can I learn to work with a boss like this?
So clearly, Rosa and Laura are coming from opposite planets here, and we know it's hardest to work with people who are your direct opposite because, by definition, they're probably going to prefer things that are not the same as what you like yourself.
True. But the place they haven't gotten to that maybe they could get to with a little more time or a little more work together is the place where the strengths of the opposites merge together in a way that makes a really powerful partnership. So it's a struggle, but if you can get there, you can be stronger for the differences that you have. The question is, how on earth are they going to get there?
Well, particularly because the instinct here on Rosa's part is to dial up her own strengths in order to connect more effectively. And I've been there. You know, you're up against somebody who doesn't seem to like you, doesn't really connect, and you want to make a good impression. You're going to do more of what you think you're really good at. And in Rosa's case, sounds like she's a really strong pioneer. She wanted to bring a lot of ideas and creativity. I love the way she describes what she did. I added some creative twists. Well, if her boss is as guardian as it sounds like she is, creative twists are not going to be appreciated. And I love also Rosa's use of the word unnecessary details. I mean, those details, I don't imagine are unnecessary to her boss.
No, I'm pretty sure that if a guardian has added a details to something, being a guardian myself, I can say that it's not seen as unnecessary. There's no process that's unnecessary, there's no structure that's unnecessary, and there's no detail that's unnecessary. And I think actually that maybe that's where Rosa should start, is try to understand, asking her boss directly, why are these details important? Why do they matter to you? Because clearly if she removed them, she doesn't understand why they matter. And clearly if Laura put them back in, they do matter and in fact are probably seen as critical by her. So if Rosa can take a step back, and I think this is often a good strategy with a guardian, take a step back and first learn about why the rules are there. You know, why is the detail there? Why do we do it this way? Why do you indent to the left or to the right? Why does this one need to be bolded and that doesn't? And why don't we round up even at an executive level? I think that could go a long way to creating trust, you know, so that her boss feels trust for her.
It's hard though. I think you're right. She should ask and she should have these conversations, and it's important to know why those decisions are being made. But I think the frustration many pioneers have is that there isn't really a reason. It's just the way it's done. So things like adding data and not rounding off, that could very well have a legitimate business reason. But indentations and things like that, I think in many pioneers' minds, and she says it, it's missing the bigger picture. So I think it's hard for a pioneer because they're frustrated that time and effort's being spent on things that are probably not adding that much value. And while they can dial back that instinct to try to better relate to their boss, I think there's a genuine concern that the bigger opportunity is being missed.
I can see how that would happen, but I can also see that part of what maybe they should be focusing on is not Rosa's style and Laura's style, but who is this getting presented for? Because it's the style of those people that matters most. So if it's a group of guardians and the details aren't quite right, they'll never get to the big picture because they're going to get tripped up by those details, and they probably really do matter. If the audience for this report is more pioneering, then they might want to focus it differently. And so maybe they could have a conversation about, hey, you know, we have very different styles and we seem to prioritize different things. How about the audience for this report? What's important to them, and how should we be focusing in that direction?
I love that reframing because with these types, You do have shared traits between some of the working styles, but of course in this instance we're talking about opposites. So by definition they don't have many shared things. They don't have that common ground. And so by reframing to the audience and to the recipient of this information, you're creating a natural common ground that might not exist between them naturally.
I think this is, particularly close to my heart because I do often think that pioneers and others think the rules are there for no reason at all. They are there for a reason. It doesn't mean that there isn't a better way. But if you sort of skip over that process with a guardian, they're not hearing you about the better way because they're busy thinking, well, you don't get it. You have to demonstrate that you get it. Then you can propose to a guardian that you might have a better way and let's explore it together.
Part of the problem here, I think, is that Rosa doesn't think her boss values her. And that's because her boss is not seeing the value because she hasn't connected it to the things that matter, as you just described. And I think if Laura, her boss, could do a better job of saying, it's really helpful to me when you propose different options for getting at this result, or say something that acknowledges that she finds her contribution to be helpful,
yes,
then Rosa would feel much more confident and maybe be more willing to flex to Laura's style.
Yeah, and I also think, clearly Rosa's feeling interpersonally like there's not the kind of connection that she would like. And it might help her to understand a little bit more about Laura's style as a guardian. Guardians tend to be reserved. They tend to be a little introverted, not quick to jump into a conversation. If she's walking down the hall looking at her phone, she's probably very focused on it. Guardians are very focused. What Rose is experiencing as maybe rude behavior or disinterest is probably just evidence of Laura's guardian style.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think it puts a nice punctuation mark on the end of Rosa's story here, because it really is an opportunity, as you said in the beginning, when you're working with somebody so different from you, because naturally they're bringing the things that you don't already see. And so to the extent that you can tap into that and you can be open to doing things a different way, that's going to be all for the good.
I think that's really true.
The confession is in. My Boss the Robot is another example of how the science of business chemistry can improve the art of relationships. Be sure to tune in for our next episode. Find it on Deloitte.com or at iTunes and Stitcher. Business chemistry can help you understand your own work style and how it's similar to or different from others. This understanding lets you flex your style to better accommodate people's unique needs and leverage their strengths. Business chemistry helps improve working relationships and build stronger teams. You can learn more at our website, Deloitte.com.